Thank you, everybody. You are witnessing the long-awaited return of Mike's Movie Podcast featuring Evan with special guest Adam. And today, in the spirit of the talk show format that we have, where truly anything goes, we are discussing the 1997 film Meet Wally Sparks, starring Rodney Dangerfield, featuring Tim Allen, Michael Bolton, Sir Mix-a-Lot. You name it, they were in this movie. And I will say that for watching this, one quick note, shout out to Scarecrow Video, because that's where I rented the DVD to watch this video. I'll be returning it later today.
It's also free on all the most bootleg streaming services, which is always a sign of quality. When you look it up on your Roku or your Apple TV, and it's like free on 10 streamers you've never heard of. Like one of them was like Drama Classics. And I was like, Drama Classics? Wally Sparks? What are we talking about here?
Well, and actually, let me actually jump in real quick to the movie renting part of this. So I was actually, the reason why I rented the DVD and why I was at Scarecrow to begin with is because I wanted to watch Wild at Heart, which I had never seen before. And I couldn't find that streaming anywhere. And I feel even guilty saying that streaming was like my first instinct there. So this is penance for my sin on that, just to confess it. But
true insane story that I only know because I was killing time waiting for Evan to be ready. The annoying son of the governor senator guy who's doing a really bad southern accent, that guy, which you don't know if you haven't seen Wild at Heart, he's the kid at the end of Wild at Heart. He's done very few movies, but he's like Nicolas Cage's son that he only meets and has no dialogue at the very end of Wild at Heart. So whenever you watch it, know that that young boy grew into the slightly not as young boy that we got to enjoy so thoroughly in Meet Wally Sparks.
Okay, now this is the content for Mike's Movie Podcast that keeps people coming back, of the connection.
Trivia, yes.
Yes, yeah. I want to talk too about the Wizard of Oz theme that came through Meet Wally Sparks from start to finish too. That was pretty pervasive throughout.
So wait, did you watch Wild at Heart? I can't tell.
No, I did watch Wild at Heart too. I'd never seen it before. So
I really want to know how you picked Meet Wally Sparks. This is kind of like a left field.
Yeah. So there are actually a couple of reasons for this one. So actually, the thing is, I have a unique fondness, the kind of a unique fondness for Rodney Dangerfield, and part of it is due to when I was growing up. So my mom said that when I was a newborn baby that I kind of looked like Rodney Dangerfield, part one, and then what happened is. So for whatever reason, kind of weird fondness for him. But then I was just kind of like flipping through YouTube, and I came across a just kind of a late night with Conan O'Brien clip from the late 90s, and Rodney Dangerfield was on there, and he was promoting Meet Wally Sparks. And I had remembered like watching the previews for Meet Wally Sparks, and it just kind of stuck with me, and it seems to kind of have that sweet spot of just like late 90s comedy that, again, that our fans crave for it. And that's
Had you ever seen it before?
I had never seen it before.
Yeah, me either. Me either.
And I did kind of have that baseline affinity for Rodney Dangerfield. And I will say too, movies like Back to School, Caddyshack, and whatnot, it's got
Ladybugs.
Ladybugs. So yeah, I mean his role as Mr. Burns' son in Simpsons, he's done some classic work here. I know that we'll get to
do Easy Money on the podcast. I feel like I watched that because of the podcast.
Oh, you know what? I believe that we'll have to go through the text thread. I believe that Easy Money was a movie that was discussed to do with the podcast, but I know that it's never been done. That's also with Joe Pesci, right?
I don't even remember, but I know that's a danger. I was looking through his IMDb. I was like, oh yeah, that one.
Mm-hmm. But so with Meet Wally Sparks, and geez, I already can't remember, Adam, if you watched this, if you made this comment before we started recording or after we started recording about mentioning like needing to kind of like break it up and watch it. I was able to watch this movie more or less in all of one sitting. I had to take like a 3 to 5 minute break there with about 30 minutes left, but I was able to watch it all last night.
There's something about the last 30 minutes. That's exactly when I fell asleep and had to finish it the next day. It's just some kind of weird hypnotic vasovagal immune response to the movie
Yeah,
about an hour in.
got to it. Evan, how was your experience with it?
Yeah, so I'm kind of surprised to hear that Adam had a hard time sitting through it. I'm surprised that it didn't occupy you the same way some of the other stuff that we have watched.
You think about it, and we'll talk about it. It's very obvious.
Well, and yeah, I think that's what we should do. But from start to finish, I felt like this was just kind of a slam dunk example of just a totally like pointless piece of shit movie that, like, and they knew it. You could tell, like, the people who made it, just like, let's just make a total, piece of horseshit and laugh about it. And I was in the first couple of minutes, where they're montaging all the trash talk show hosts. I got really excited because I thought, like, if that's going to be the tone and the content, because I knew nothing about the movie. I knew zero. But
I had no idea it was a talk show thing. I'd only seen the cover and the poster, and I thought it was some Las Vegas shit.
Right. No, same. Yeah, I thought it was this guy's like a gambler, wine and diner, or whatever. And so I thought that was really good. And just excited about that. I will say, though, I agree with you, and we can talk more about this, like the hypnotic kind of like just deadening kind of, oh fuck, it's like you're just getting punched in the stomach, and it's like, god damn.
Did you guys guess? So Izzy started it with me last night, and she gave up before me. Does anyone want to guess the crucial scene where she was like, I can't do this, I'm out of here?
The marble dick, the marble.
She got past that. That was fine. That was fine.
Okay, well, that one was it the Risky Business parody scene?
Absolutely. Once he hit that piano, she was like, I'm out of here.
It's really yeah, but that's cool. I mean, I'm glad that shit like that exists. I do, and I mean,
for me, that's one of the good parts.
Oh yeah, and it's refreshing to watch shit like that. It's that wouldn't get made now, 25 years later. Let's just be as inappropriate as possible. But I will say, whenever a movie like that is longer than 90 minutes, I'm always kind of baffled. Like, what about this suggested that you needed it to be? And I don't like talking about running times of movies. I think it's a dumb thing to talk about. However, in this case, it's like you really should try to make it like the maximum dosage is 90 minutes of that kind of thing.
I had the same note because there's multiple scenes where you can tell they're like stretching it to fill time. And I'm like, so why is it over 90 minutes? If you have like this wasting time, milking it nonsense, just stop it earlier.
Yeah, I don't get it. And it seems like several scenes are just, it's a similar thing. I noticed that the show Family Guy does this, where they have these kind of like grinding, just painful extensions of jokes, where they'll just like do it. It's funny the first time, a little bit the second time, and then it goes like they'll do it 20 more times. And the whole scene, which should be 30 seconds, ends up being 6 minutes. They did that in this movie, like with the marble penis thing, which was stupid from the beginning. Like, it's a not clever joke. Right.
That's one of my favorite parts.
Mine too, because it's such a shitty, stupid joke.
Yeah.
And it's just like a big marble dick. Like, of course, let's just do as much as we can. And somehow it's in his pocket and pointing out in a way that doesn't really make sense. Like,
such a good ending when the lady dips it
in the ranch and gets just a little bit on her tongue, right? She just gets a little bit of the fake cum in her mouth.
That joke did have the payoff, though, when they think the campaign ad is being shown, and then the camcorder gets stuck, and this keeps on looping over and over again.
Yeah, right.
Probably my number one favoriteest part.
And that's where I couldn't really pay attention enough to get all those little. I couldn't really remember why were they filming that? Why was Wally and his crew filming stuff at the governor's?
Just for the show, to have some bullshit, fancy stuff, and make fun of the governor on the show.
Okay.
Here's a pop quiz for you that I wouldn't remember if I didn't finish it just now. What is the guy blackmailing him for? Can either of you tell me what his goal was in blackmailing the governor?
Oh yeah, I can tell you.
So with blackmailing, so this is something where if you don't mind me jumping in here, is that so I know that the governor was also running for senator.
Yeah, but that's separate.
Okay, well, here's where I actually get a bit confused as to what the blackmail was actually for, because I know that the people that were blackmailing him, they had like the Civil War Museum. That
oh no, you are right. It is crucial that he's becoming senator. You remember better than me. You're absolutely right.
Yeah, but yeah, and that's something to do with the governor being like, no, these are like protected lands that they can't be on, so he was opposed to it. But it's like what I would interpret in blackmailing it, though. I think he was being blackmailed not to run for senator.
I think
no,
yeah.
he was being blackmailed. He wanted the blackmailer was a developer and wanted to develop this.
Blackmailer just is wearing Colonel Sanders shit.
He's wearing a Mississippi string tie for some reason in 1999, and he wanted the governor, senator candidate, to sign off on letting him develop this theme park. And the governor indicated early in the movie that he wasn't going to be able to do that. And so then the blackmailer, Mississippi string tie guy, decided to blackmail him to make.
But he already did the blackmail. The blackmail predates the events of the film.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So it's weird. So maybe he was just wanted to have it in his back pocket.
Yeah, you would. That's what doesn't make sense. You would think you would be like, if you don't sign off on this, I'll release this. But then it definitely becomes, don't run for senator.
They kind of
then he's got no blackmail on whoever runs instead.
They kind of try. I think they kind of try to develop that governor dude's character a little bit throughout. Like they have the porn star lady kind of try to tell him like, hey, we were together. I don't know if you remember. And you kind of you're not sure yet whether the governor is a good guy or not. Mm-hmm. Right. And then they develop that into like, oh, he's actually he's a good person.
Yeah.
I guess.
My absolute favorite part about the blackmail plot is like even more than other movies of the era, I feel like Rodney really leans into his jokes of referencing drugging or inebriating women for the purposes of sexually assaulting them, which is played as a joke, as it was at the time. But then the plot hinges on the governor having been drugged and sexually assaulted, which is played as like a serious thing that like, how could they do this? Yeah, whereas like Rodney's been making that joke the entire movie, and then they're like, hey, wait, so a lady did it to the governor. What the hell? That ain't how it's supposed to work. My favorite is when he's giving the horse the alcohol, and I actually wrote down exactly what he says. He goes to the horse, there you go, have a party. I promise I won't take advantage of you, to the horse. I just like have a party to the horse drinking whiskey.
Yeah, my favorite joke in the whole movie was in the first like 30 seconds of the movie where he's up on stage during the montage and he's like, I saved a woman from being attacked. I changed my mind. That's really good. What a clever, good, genuine joke.
But you know what? Here's the thing. That's what you come for a Rodney Dangerfield movie for. You know you're getting that. That is none of that shit. And all the shit where the henchman guy's getting tortured, that's what I want. That was my other favorite part of the movie, is the squirrel eating his nuts, etc. What I didn't like and don't understand is the romance subplot with their normal, non-zany, non-funny children. Who is that for? That takes up over half an hour of the movie to just have two normal people that have no bits, no jokes, have a normal romance that the dads are like, I don't know about this. That's just
pure cocaine. I don't understand. Like that is just straight up whiskey and cocaine in the production.
Whiskey and cocaine make people like, how do we have a boring normal romance in our crazy movie?
No. It makes no sense. That's what I'm talking about. Like the two sons, I wrote down the two sons have so many, it's just inexplicable. Like what
the young kid at least is up to hijinks. I don't care about his like reconnecting with his dad thing, but he is doing dumb movie shit
for different reasons. But it just the level of not
Yeah.
making sense is
The
super high. Like, and with the young kid, the inexplicable part is like, what? Who? They all sat in a room and watched tape of him doing that accent.
That
And
was Izzy's first comment. She was
yeah,
like,
this is good.
is that even like they couldn't find a Southern kid? There's no Southern accent kids they could find.
It's the most bizarrely off,
yeah.
you know. But
The
And why Rodney's son is in a band doing the worst cover of Fire anyone's ever recorded in the history of music. And Rodney's like, hey, pretty good. It's like a slow adult contemporary version of the Jimi Hendrix classic. Just what everybody wanted.
yeah, Mike, what did you think about Rodney's son in the movie?
you know what? I looked at his son and I'm like, hey, you're all right.
Yeah, see, for me, he's the most like fucked up character in the whole movie.
Yeah.
Like, just looking at him makes me laugh. Like the beard and the hair, and just like that he's supposed to be like, hey, you know, and that to me is the whiskey and cocaine. They're like, listen, we got to have some eye candy in the movie. You know, we got Rodney's assistant, and then his son's gonna be the eye candy for
Rodney's
the
assistant is named Debbie Mazar. And if you don't know that, I don't know why you're even on a fucking movie podcast. I would also like to discuss Debbie Mazar. This is peak Debbie Mazar. This is the year after Space Truckers, which previously was probably my favorite Debbie Mazar. And Debbie Mazar is looking good in this. And she's, I would just like to say that, like, I was very glad she got as big a role as she did. And I'm offended that Evan didn't identify her by name.
I don't know the names. I know her from other movies, but no, that's not. I mean, look,
Beethoven second.
I'm not
She's
going
the
to.
villain.
I'm not going to pretend I'm something I'm not. My job on this podcast is to come
I'm
from.
just honestly surprised you don't know Debbie Mazar's name.
No, I don't know.
The
I'm trying to remember where I knew I recognized her and the Miller guy, the Toady guy, from. I couldn't remember where I recognized him, but
Reynolds' assistant, the guy that they keep just beating the shit out of.
Burt Reynolds' assistant. Yeah, exactly.
I'm sure he's in a bunch of shit, but he was not. I recognized the governor's assistant, and I don't know from what. I recognized. I had to look it up because I didn't remember. But the governor's wife is the mom in Bingo, so that's a big deal.
Yeah, sure. Well, yeah, and no, I don't think you should be surprised. I've always said, like, I'm not a movie person. I would never meet your standards of.
I know you don't, but Debbie Mazar is a star. If Debbie Mazar ever sees this, I love you, Debbie. You're beautiful. I support you.
She was one of my favorite parts of the movie for sure. No, I'm a big fan of her, of what she did here. I didn't hate the movie. It's just that I was viewing it as like, wow, this is just going to be a big dog shit parade, and let's enjoy it. I didn't think it needed to be that long, and it was hard to watch toward the end. It was a bit exhausting.
the movie could have been about 65 minutes.
Yeah. If you cut all the worthless parts out, it would be a totally passable bullshit romp. But they just fucking pumped it full of shit no one wants or cares about.
Yeah, I think what we need to do is we need to recut the movie. 65 minutes.
Fan edit.
Yeah.
And then we'll sneak into the Largo Entertainment vault and re-edit the negative and put it back in theaters, and we'll destroy the camera negative of the useless parts so that they will never be remastered again, and you can only watch the good parts with the boners and the beating up toady guy shit.
Speaking of movies, is there anything out in the theaters right now that I might want to go see?
I mean, Asteroid City next week. That's a big deal.
Yeah, but I mean, like today, like
today. I don't know.
Boogeyman.
That doesn't look. It's not for me. That's all I can say about that.
You haven't heard anything about
it. Hold on a second. Wait, Adam. Wait, are you going to see Asteroid City? Do you like Wes Anderson movies?
Oh, I mean, absolutely. French Dispatch was like one of my favorite of his movies, and that was the last one.
Mike, it's totally random what he decides to like and not like. It's just,
I just make it up. I roll a Dungeons and Dragons 32-sided dice.
Anything superhero, hard no. Netflix, no.
Not even everything superhero. Everything modern superhero. There are totally good superhero movies. You ever heard of Meteor Man.
I was just thinking about Meteor Man. Okay, that's so funny that you mentioned that because I just finished today. Mike knows.
You ever heard of Blank Man? And do you ever heard of Steel? I really like black superheroes.
Yeah, well, so
and not
listen,
fucking Black Panther. That guy died. He was an insult to Meteor
Well,
Man, Blank Man, and Steel.
and I just finished before this show the new biography of LeBron James, who more than any other, the book really applauds him for his role in social activism, particularly racial injustice. And they quoted one of his, press releases or statements that said, because he worked with the director of Black Panther to make Space Jam. And when he decided to make Space Jam 2, he applauded the director for being someone who he's like, when I was a kid, Black Batman was the only superhero, which isn't true. And I'm glad that he made a movie where there's a black cast, a superhero movie with the black cast. That had never been done before, like implying that Black Panther. Yeah, and
what kind of racially ignorant man?
It's true. However, you could make the case that how come all the black superhero movies in the 90s had to be jokes? Like Meteor Man, Blank Man, those are both like spoof movies.
I think I didn't know that.
Meteor Man, not so much.
Well, can I just thinking about like the movies in the 90s for that one is so like Meteor Man, Blank Man, and whatnot. Oh, actually, I'm actually not sure what point I'm going to make here, so I'm going to let that
Meteor Man was a good movie.
Let's just keep saying them like the Father, the Son, and the Holy Ghost.
There are others.
Steel.
No, there's others though too. Like, come on, more 90s black superhero movies. Not just the hero is black, the whole cast for the most part. I'm thinking like, what's the one with? There's one with Pluto Nash. There's Pluto Nash.
That's not a superhero movie.
There's okay, well, Meteor Man is a good one. I know there's one other one, and Meteor Man is a good movie.
I know. I brought it up.
Well, I was thinking of it too.
I invented it.
The fact that you brought it up.
You've never heard of it until I said it just now.
Yeah, that would be a good one to rewatch for the podcast, because I remember like in the 90s watching that one a lot on HBO, and I like remember the scene when when Meteor Man, when the guy with the machine gun, and he is able to stop all the bullets and he does it successfully, but then he looks at his hands and his hands are bleeding, and he realizes that his powers are fading, and yeah. And then you have like Bill Cosby, who has a chunk of the meteor, which he's able to use later in the movie. So yeah, I need to rewatch that.
That's what he put in the women's drinks. The chunks
you intoxicate young girls. And do we know?
But no, I think we should do all three, but then save them and do it like all in a row for Black History Month next year.
I'm totally down. Sponsored by Mike's employer, who I won't mention the name.
I'm unemployed. I quit my job, so I'm a total free agent now.
Okay.
I just really like the idea of like we do like one episode every 6 to 8 months, but then next Black History Month every Friday, and have 90s Black superhero movies.
Work. Yeah, sponsored by University of North Carolina, by the UNC system.
Yeah. We'll have a. What I'll do, Evan, is that you'll be like, hey, everybody, I'm going to, when you're teaching your class, and here's a video related to statistical methods, but little will you know, I will have replaced it with the podcast. And
they will all see
every episode. Oh, this is related to the podcast. Since we're talking about the podcast, our favorite topic of the podcast, I am out of Cumtown. I'm caught up on the Adam Freeland show. I had to come up with a new show. I'm getting into podcast about List. And a thing I discovered they do is when you try to get into it and go back to the start, they completely wiped out the first 85 episodes. And they have a little thing saying that they think the first 85 episodes suck and they hadn't figured the show out and it only got good after episode 85. And it made me wonder how many episodes we've done and when we started to figure out when it got good.
Dude, it was good instantly.
You think we have over 85? How many do we have? Guess. Just guess. I have no idea.
That's probably
over 50.
That's probably in the ballpark. We'll never have them all in one spot though, because
I keep forgetting. I have most of the old ones somewhere on a hard drive.
You need
Yeah,
to eventually fix
They're in
this.
that box from Raiders of the Lost Ark. They're in the boxes at Trump's house. He took them from me.
Well,
Topical.
So I'm actually pulling up some of the old podcasts. I believe that Jack and Jill was the very first one that we did.
No.
And then some of the other ones that we had
Are you
were
saying
Bucky
that's the one
Larson.
where it got good?
no, that's the first one Mike and I ever did.
Really? Is that true? That's accurate. That feels like later.
Yeah, the first one. So I'm looking at my folder right now, and Jack and Jill. Because here's the thing with Jack and Jill is like I prepped for that podcast where I had like an agenda that I was going through for that one, and I can tell you that my notes from that were February 26, 2015. So we are coming up on. So we have reached the great 8 mark in terms of years of doing this podcast. So yeah, and I remember that. Yeah, that would have been like the first one because I also remember I have the same computer that I do too. This was like one of the first things that we had on that. So yeah, that was that would have been the first one. And I want to say
how many files are in the folder? If you have a folder, even if it's not complete, how many files you got in there?
Well, that's the thing. So like it's actually fairly scattered. What I have here too. So, and I know that it's not complete what I have because the files that I have here are let's see, Jack and Jill, Bucky Larson, Dunkirk, Last Action Hero, T2 podcast, Zookeeper are the only ones that I'm seeing. I'm gonna have to go through because I think I actually deleted some of the other podcasts because they were up on just for storage. But I know that there are other ones like the 70s podcast, for example, when Evan and I definitively argued that the 70s were the nadir of all entertainment and nothing good ever came from them. And Adam ultimately came around and agreed with us on that. But that
took some convincing.
When we do a podcast about lists, we'll delete everything before the 70s one. And that'll be the beginning.
Yeah.
Oh, come on.
I would say probably the ones where we probably got our stride probably would have been around I think it probably would have been around like Last Action Hero. Yeah, Last Action Hero, so July. Well, maybe a little bit earlier than that. I'm gonna have to. But I feel like it was probably around like episode 4 or 5 where Evan and I kind of got going on that one, where we became a bit less stiff. And I do actually remember, Adam, too, that you had some like pretty comprehensive like feedback for the episodes that you provided.
I still have those. That'll go in the library archives when the Mike's Movie Podcast Museum opens up in Alexandria, with the best place for that kind of thing.
And my brother.
This all started because Evan asked me a question while we were talking. I looked it up. In short, in my opinion, based on things in theaters in the state of Vermont, no, there's nothing I think is worth watching in theaters right now. You live in a bigger urban area. You may have more options. Did you see Beau is Afraid? That was the last great movie.
It was in theaters for like 2 seconds.
Yeah, you got to know. You got to strike while the iron's hot.
I wanted to see it. I can't, mobilize as quickly and easily as you can. So I didn't see it. It'll be.
No, unfortunately, there's nothing good in theaters right now, in my opinion. Here, at least.
So, Mike, you watched Wally Sparks the old-fashioned way. You rented.
I did.
Adam found a.
I was tempted to watch. I was tempted to install one of the bootleg streaming services, but I was like, I can't fuck around. I just did Vudu Free, which served me 5 ads every 8 minutes. It was like probably made the movie like 3 hours long.
That's fun.
And I get nothing but prep ads, the like preventative AIDS drug, which I brought up at work. I was like, how about these prep ads, guys? And everyone's like, what are you talking about? And I was like, you guys don't get served AIDS ads all the time? And they're like, no, we don't even know what prep is. And I was like, no, what? And somehow my TV thinks I have AIDS or that I'm going to get AIDS. And I asked Izzy, I was like, we've been getting this for years. Do you have any idea why? And then we went through friends who have come over to try and figure out who we think made it think we're going to get AIDS, but we couldn't figure it out. Do you guys get prep ads on your streaming services?
Never seen one.
I don't tolerate ads on my streaming services.
The new prep ads are more normal. The first wave prep ads, they were more overtly catered to a demographic of gay men having casual sex, where it's like guys at the train station like making sexy eye contact with each other, and I think that was made fun of too much, and now it's just like normal stock footage of couples. and it's like talking about reducing your risk.
Prep ads are not rare. They're all over the place. Prep is huge.
Apparently, no one I work with has them, and they all thought I have AIDS because I was the only one who knew what I was talking about.
It's.
Do you guys ever believe I'm the only one that knows what I'm talking about at work? Also, by the way, rest in power, Ted Kaczynski. Speaking of topical things to talk about,
Oh,
I wonder if Ted Kaczynski saw me, Wally Sparks, in prison.
yeah.
That seems like a movie they would show guys in prison. I get guys in prison probably love Rodney Dangerfield.
There's so many more things. But yeah, so I paid the $3.99 to rent it from Jeff Bezos, and I gave him some money. But you know, part of the reason I do, and I'm always aware, like there's got to be a more clever way to do this than to go on Amazon and pay. Because whenever we do a movie like this, that's kind of somewhat obscure, I always feel like I'm the one who ends up paying money to rent it, almost always on Amazon. And I
mean, you can always pirate things. I don't know if you're just not saying that's the alternative. Your three options are watch it with stupid ads, which is what I do for a movie like this. And number zero is if you can rent it on Amazon, it's not obscure. Your options are rent it if you can rent it, watch it with ads, or pirate it. And this movie, these days, pretty much anything that you can pay to stream, you can pirate. But there was a nebulous period where like this was the kind of movie that was hard to pirate because it has no cult cachet to it. Like there is no underground fan base for this, and it's not successful in any way, shape, or form. So it's like a middle ground, not a major studio movie. Still played in theaters.
I don't want to spend time on developing the whole like consumption of pirate infrastructure. Plus,
then you watch it with ads. Those are your three choices. It's very simple.
Right. And I'd rather pay the $4 and watch it with ads. Plus, what works out is, and I'm hoping this will happen this time, is typically we did this with Bagger Vance, we've done it with other movies. I'll pay to rent it. My brothers have my password and they mooch off my Amazon rental. So then they can watch the movie and then consume the podcast if they know it's good for them, you know.
Yeah. Well,
if only they had to pay Jeff Bezos $3 to listen to the podcast.
$3.99.
Yeah, we should start charging people for the podcast as well. I think
I've been talking about trying to develop this for years, and the truth is,
you would literally just have to get on Patreon. You would get on Patreon. Nick would be the only one who would pay for it. He would share with Nick America, and that would be it.
That's never going to happen.
Yeah, if we truly wanted to make any sort of meaningful money off the podcast, we would have to have like at least 2 episodes a week that we were cranking.
You can do one a week. You can do one a week.
Now
we'll start with Black History Month next year, and we'll have one a week. We'll start planning now that next year we'll have one a week. So we have like until next Black History Month to build up a backlog to start rolling out one a week.
What we could do is we could go on like a retreat, like take 2 weeks off and just like watch movies and just like bam, 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 bam. Just like do 52 movies, 2 weeks, 52 podcasts. It's like
never anytime. That's what I do normally. You can just be a part of my normal life.
Just want to go back to the whole streaming thing, and like to tie back to Wally Sparks is that I can't imagine watching Wally Sparks on a free service with ads every 8 minutes or so, 5 ads. Like I feel like the movie is like
good. It was a chance for me to be like, whew, all right, well, let's have a snack. Let's have a little soda pop. Let's just go look outside, breathe some fresh air, remind myself of the beauty in the world. while the same prep ad plays for the 10th time.
It's funny that there were all these prep ads on Wally Sparks.
It's like, are you fucking strangers while you watch Rodney Dangerfield movies? Most men watching Rodney Dangerfield are probably gonna get AIDS in 2023.
It's not just prep is targeted a lot to the trans community as well.
Maybe it's got me pegged.
Well,
a lot of exciting new extreme electronic music is made by trans people, and it probably knows I watch a lot of their show videos on my phone.
Why do you think that is?
I don't know. I have considered it, and I don't have a thesis, but it's definitely a thing. The community is aware of it. I, a fan of it, am aware of it. But yeah, the mechanism or why it's the case.
Well, you would think so. So it's noise music, you said?
No. Noise is very straight guy bullshit, 100%. Specifically, like they don't call it breakcore anymore. People will just call it hardcore techno, but like it's really weird. It's not what like normal club. It's like aggressive electronic music that isn't even really for dancing because it's too chaotic. There's a weird underground of that I pay attention to where there's a lot of trans people, and I'm like, all right.
It's a sexual thing. It's a sexual. The
I
music.
mean, isn't everything? Have you ever seen Shivers, the Cronenberg movie, with the famous monologue about how everything is sexual? You would love that. Even if you don't like the movie Shivers, you should look up the famous monologue about everything is sex from Shivers.
They didn't invent that. That's Sigmund Freud.
Wow, this is really groundbreaking stuff here.
You take you
Are
back.
you telling me that David Cronenberg, who made a movie about Sigmund Freud, is influenced by the work of Sigmund Freud?
But no, but you were sharing this as if it was the discovery.
The point is, I cannot accurately recreate the monologue. The monologue has a lot of depth and granularity to it that I'm not going to come up with off the top of my head. That's what's good about it.
Okay, I think you should, from memory, the best you can, recreate it in the style of Rodney Dangerfield.
I mean, I also liked that he was just openly a guy who not only likes but requires regular service from escorts.
Yes. Well, just to jump in, he had a quote that I put up here where he said, because he was talking about when he was, rehabbing from his injury that he had, and he said, if 4 goes, and then you're talking about healthcare stuff, and talking about healthcare, critical condition is something that comes up, and he says, if 4 days go by and I don't have sex, that's critical condition.
Yeah, do we think Rodney Dangerfield was actually having that much sex at this age?
Probably.
Well, the person, not the character, the person.
Well, I choose to believe that this Wally Sparks, as goofy as the movie is, he wanted it to be an extension of his true self, but an expression of the real Rodney.
Yeah. I'm sure he came up with the 4 days interval. Like, there's no way that other nobody that's credited for the story and screenplay came up with 4 days. They're like, Rodney, how long can you go without fucking someone? And he was like, 4 days max. They were like, really? Aren't you almost dead?
Yeah. But he also, I have to believe that's an extension of his real life at the time, or like maybe not like maybe he wasn't actually having sex every 4 days, but that was like what was on his mind.
But you never know. Is it really sex? I mean, he may just have some girls kind of like dancing around and farting on his face or some shit like that. He called it sex. I mean, I doubt that he could get his cucumber up. Oh, that's another thing.
That's what I'm wondering about.
Well, because I think this movie was filmed in '96. And when did Viagra come out? That was like what, 98? So it's the same. And he was like 75 at the time.
I also, when I saw how bullshit this movie was, I was like, was this the last one? Forgetting we had recently talked about the fourth tenor, I think, at some point. But then I looked and he had like 5 more feature films, all of which were even more bullshit than this. Yeah. The Godson, the fourth tenor.
My 5 Wives.
My 5 Wives, and then Back by Midnight looks to be the actual final, him as the lead movie from 2004.
Oh, wow. Yeah, he was ticking along. Those escorts really hummed his dinger,
Well, like Mike was saying, Viagra came out and he found a second wind.
Right. Well, and I think the sex workers are what fueled his passion. I mean, it just gave him that raw virality.
So I want to ask a question about Rodney Dangerfield, just like how both of you feel about him, both as a stand-up and both as a comedic actor. If you have any sort of if you're like Rodney Dangerfield fans, or or not.
I would say I'm a casual fan. I was literally, when he was doing his bits in this movie, I was like, I enjoy many of this man's movies, not really this one, but like I cannot imagine knowing his thing and being like, honey, let's get tickets to the theater and see Rodney do this for an hour. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But Rover Dangerfield, Ladybugs, Back to School. Those are basically the ones from like Comedy Central matinees. That's like the bread and butter of my experience with this work.
Ladybugs is a movie I've seen a lot of times, and
I swear it's because of Comedy Central matinees.
Right.
I feel like it was on constantly.
it was on constantly.
Well, that's right. And Ladybugs, it took me a while for this to click into place because I think I was getting this in my mind, wires crossed with the Big Green. But Ladybugs, that's where Jonathan Brandis.
Another rest in power. He's up there in heaven with Ted Kaczynski.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, I don't know if you guys know this, but I actually have another podcast that features Rodney Dangerfield. It's co-host Rodney Dangerfield and Cliff Burton with occasional special guest Kobe Bryant.
And what's it called? What do you talk about?
Podcast from the grave. Oh, anything. Music, movies, finance.
Podcast from the grave was the best you could come up with.
Actually, I think my brother came up with the title because I think one time I called and left a voicemail. I've done this to Mike too, where I'll just pretend to be Rodney Dangerfield and whatever, dead man's body.
Would you, if we were alive and we could do it, would you guys? I'm guessing by the 90s, if you saw him live, it was probably pretty expensive. I'm guessing $100 for decent seat tickets. Would you guys have paid $100 to see Rodney Dangerfield do stand-up comedy in the 90s?
And what year is this?
90s. Let's say 90s. Not prime, because he was a stand-up. The prime time is whatever. But when we were most thinking of him.
Okay, so I want to kind of dissect this hypothetical here because there are a couple, I think, important considerations. So I think we were all born in '85. Is that right? So in this hypothetical, were we like born in like 1965, 1970? So we would have been like.
Let's say we're at least a little older, old enough that we could have gone without a parent.
Okay. So the thing is, in terms of like, would we have paid to see Rodney Dangerfield? So again, we'll say it's 1992. And here we are, like all three of us are at the University of Wisconsin. And they're like, hey, Rodney Dangerfield, he's playing at the Pabst Theater here on Friday night. Do you want
to Overture Center?
Yeah, right. Or maybe the Orpheum or something like that. And like we'll say he's playing at the Orpheum Theater.
The Alliant Energy Center.
Yeah, okay, yeah, that's actually probably better. Yeah. I have to believe, like, what else would we be doing then? I mean, at that time.
It's like, if it was $20, whatever. It wouldn't have been $20. I'm saying let's say it's like you have to really care. It's like $100 for decent seats.
Okay.
And no one's going to get us free tickets. We have to pay $100+ of our own money, which I think is semi-reasonable for 90s era Rodney. What do you think? I would not.
I could see if it was like Jerry Seinfeld or something.
I have, and I would again.
Yeah, I would do that. But Rodney Dangerfield, I find him amusing as kind of a supporting character, and like kind of some of his jokes as like 3 or 4 one-liners, and you kind of get the gist of it. But like you said, like an hour of like
because you know what
stuff
like, it's gonna be.
Yeah. Wait, what do you say?
I said because it's gonna be just that the whole time. He's gonna say all the ones from the movies, and then just do more of that.
Yeah, I can't get no respect.
And like, I can't remember. You know how at the start there's all that like audience response stuff? Yeah. Was that part of his stand-up act where they're like, "Oh, what was she?" Yeah. Oh, one thing I wrote, because my computer is gonna die. My notes are on a separate computer. What is being referenced with the elbow bands? Who did that he's referencing?
I think he's just supposed to look like a casino card dealer guy.
They have those elbow bands? What the fuck are those elbow bands?
I know bartenders used to wear them. I think it's to keep your shirt out of the drink or the cards. I don't know.
I just had never seen it, and it felt like it was specifically referencing something I was not getting.
No, I think it's like the string tie. It's more of that kind of cocaine in the wardrobe room.
Yeah. I will be right back. I need to use the restroom.
While Mike is gone, I don't think you got a chance to answer your Rodney Dangerfield personal history and experience.
No, I wouldn't go. I certainly wouldn't pay $100. I don't.
No,
I'm
but in general, separate from that, I turned it into that, but that's me getting off track. Mike originally just wanted to know our opinions about him in general.
Oh, he occupies a very small niche that I'm glad that he occupies.
That's the right way to say that. I say niche.
I think it's either way. I prefer niche, but
Yeah, it rhymes with bitch. I like to sound French and fancy. I also recently got in a fight at work. How do you pronounce, and I'm going to try and think of a way to say this, the word for a snake eating itself? Say that word.
isn't it Ouroboros?
That's what everyone else says. I again I'm coming from left field with
Ouroboros?
now I've heard you say it. Now I'm gonna have to like think hard the way I usually say it. Ouroboros. That's not how you said it, right?
I've never heard that. I've
Is
never
that
heard
not how you say it? Say it your way. To me, Izzy says it the same way everyone but me says it. To me, that sounds like a dog. It's like,
Well,
Yeah.
I
I actually don't think I can actually pronounce it, so I'd be like Orbos.
I like that. That's my favorite one.
Orbos.
Ouroboros.
Yeah, y'all got Ouroboros.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yes.
it's an item on the buffet at the K&W cafeteria, which is a failing chain of buffets down south. We're fat, white.
That does seem like if you wanted to cook a snake, it would be convenient to have one in a loop eating itself to like dip it in the fryer later.
Yeah,
Buffet.
they do that too. They do that as well. You know, they'll just eat themselves. And been seeing a lot of snakes down here, guys. Big ones, 10-footers, 12-footers.
What are you doing where you're around big snakes?
They're everywhere. They're like as common as squirrels down here.
How about that squirrel eating guys' nuts in this movie? That was a good
Yeah.
part. That's in the top 5 best parts of the movie.
Is he eating them? So I'm glad you mentioned that because that's one of the
Sound
last.
effect. There's a sound effect. And then
But he
everyone goes,
likes it. He makes like sexual pleasure noises while
I think the henchman guy at the end, yes. Everyone else is just kind of shocked by it.
Yeah. Well, did you all watch the mid-credit scene with the?
I thought about it, but I was like, I can't bring myself to wait any longer. I was like, I have other things to do with my life.
There was a mid-credit scene. I don't know if you watched this, Evan, where the henchman guy is on a talk show with the squirrel, and they're like basically like clearly having a sustained romantic relationship.
My God. Well, now I got to go back and watch it. And the funny thing about when you go back and watch it, which I discovered when I finished it this morning, when you watch it on a free service with the ads and you fast forward, it like queues up ads and makes you watch a million ads to just watch. Like if I want to watch the credit scene, I'm going to have to fast forward for 10 minutes and then it's going to make me watch like 20 ads to just watch the big credit scene. But now that you've told me what it is, I will definitely be doing that.
Yeah. I want to add just actually a couple notes here. One that's related to the squirrel scene, and then one that's related to the credits as well. Because I actually stayed and watched the whole credits as well. And I do have a fun fact from that one. But I was going to say that a note that I had here was Miller, who's the name of the henchman, Miller's squirrel scene, like the Riddler in the Batman, because there was kind of a similarity in the Batman where there was the guy that like had the mousetrap over his head and he got his face chewed off by mice. And I just thought that.
Oh, in the new one.
Yeah, the new one, yeah, with on that one. So, but of course they as any good comedy does, Wally Sparks, they subvert your expectations and they turn that scene into kind of more of a pleasurable sensation. The credits here is that there is the credits song. So this is after the mid-credit scene with the squirrel. There is a song called "Commercial Breakup." I'm sorry, Communication Breakup, which is performed by Devo.
Okay, cool.
And I thought that was notable.
In 1998, that was not a commercial decision to put a Devo song at the end of your movie.
Yeah, that was so anyway, that is that. Not much to discuss there, but those are
now I can't believe I didn't watch the end credits. I thought about it because it felt like a movie that was gonna have a mid/end credit sequence, but I just lacked the conviction. But now I regret it. Now I'm gonna have to go back.
the with the Miller character too, and this is actually kind of one of the things about the movie that just didn't make much sense to me is that I don't know why the henchman was concerned about Wally Sparks faking his injury and how like
Because he thought it would get him fired. That was a
Trying to make
way they were
sure.
getting to do their whole thing, which was getting Bert to let them keep doing it, and he wants them to not be on the network. And he thought revealing that would pull the rug out from the whole apparatus of extending the show, which he was against in the first place.
okay.
What is that guy's job? And how is he able to just go do all this spy
There's a
stuff?
joke about it because at the end, Bert's like, "Get him in here." And they're like, "He's been gone all week."
Right. So it's like
And no one noticed. Also,
Yeah.
I looked it up. This is the same year Bert was in Boogie Nights and the Mr. Bean movie. What a year he had. Meet Wally Sparks, the Mr. Bean movie, and Boogie Nights.
But that's just because he had called up his agent and said, "Hey, I'm clean.
Yeah.
Give me some jobs."
I actually have that Adam, you're bringing up something I did want to discuss here because also from the post-credit scene, not from the post-credit scene, from the credits, saw this movie was filmed in 1996, which I believe predates Boogie Nights. And I remember when Boogie Nights came out, where that was like Burt Reynolds' back baby, and like before that, like I just remember it being like Burt Reynolds is bankrupt, he's broke, like his career is out. So it seems like this in this movie would have been like peak Burt Reynolds is totally washed up and he's done.
Yeah.
Sparks, and then Boogie Nights.
Kind of is what he resumed doing after Boogie Nights. It was supposed to be a Travolta Pulp Fiction scenario, but it didn't really take because I think Burt was a little cuckoo and not making good choices post Boogie Nights because famously he hates that movie and wishes he didn't do it. One more thing before my computer dies. There are two quotes I wanted to read because this is my computer where I have my notes. One is something I just wanted to work into conversation in the podcast, but it hasn't happened, so I'm just going to read it. There's a part when I think Bert says it, either Bert says it or someone says it to Bert. Oh, Bert says it when he's like, "We're old friends." And then Bert is explaining to the henchman why being old friends matters. And he's like, "There's a code of ethics amongst old friends in the broadcasting industry." And that just seemed like something, we would know about as old friends in broadcasting industry. And then the other one is at the end when the fucking governor says, "Being your daddy is the best job I ever had."
Wow.
Yeah. I didn't take issue with the being the daddy. I do like that you mentioned the Burt Reynolds quote, but I don't think we have talked enough about that governor character in general, who did do a good Southern accent. That guy did.
Yeah, absolutely. I wouldn't be so shocked if he's actually Southern.
Yeah, could be true. But I liked the work that guy was doing. He was a great kind of like semi nefarious character, and I just liked the way that he bounced off of Rodney, both literally and figuratively. He was a good foil.
Yeah, and like you're saying, at the start, you're kind of like, is this the bad guy? But then in the end, really, he has to, through Rodney Rodney has to facilitate his ego death so he can experience a mind expanding rebirth about being a daddy is the most important job. And then like the mandala, it emerges that he becomes senator once he has stopped caring about the job he thought was most important.
Yeah, and there's all these like the governor guys receiving these kind of admonishments throughout about, well, you really need to spend more time with the boy. He needs some attention.
It's so funny. All the 90s shit. Remember the Family's Values tour and all the Pleasantville, all the like retro 50s family bullshit, which this movie is definitely trafficking in. It's just such a weird, funny thing. It's on my mind because of another podcast, the current season of You Must Remember This on Erotic 90s, because she talks a lot about censorship, litigation, and movies that like did NC-17 stuff and things like that, which this movie is choosing to fixate on talk shows, which like I didn't really give a fuck about at the time. I don't give a fuck about now. I don't really know how big an impact those had on actual censorship laws, but Did you guys watch, like, the only one I ever want to go back because the guy just looks ridiculous is the Morton Downey Jr. show. That's the only one I ever have an urge to watch of all those old shows. Did you guys watch any of those shows that they're like alluding to here?
I did not. So watch any of the shows. 'Cause I know Jerry Springer was one that was actually fairly popular in my household, and then I was like familiar with like Sally Jesse Raphael and Phil
Oh,
Donahue just from the general thing. Actually, I know that my mom and oldest sister went to a taping of Jerry Springer back
Wow.
back in the '90s, and it wasn't one of
And
those like.
because I'm totally oblivious. Did those shows ever actually experience censorship? Because the whole movie is based around those shows being censored, and I'm like, I'm unaware of that ever being a thing.
Yeah.
But I never watched those shows, so I don't really know.
that was the most like sensical part of the movie, was that this was a character who exemplified this mid-late 90s trash talk, trash TV explosion. And it was like,
But yeah, it was hugely popular and successful. No one was ever censoring it. And the whole thing is like, well, they want to censor it. It's like, I don't think they did. It was
well,
hugely successful well past this movie.
no, but I think that was Rodney Dangerfield just stealing the Howard Stern Private Parts idea, which like that whole movie it's a form of a documentary kind of, but it's more of just the whole plot is about that. Like, here's a guy who changed radio by going against
Radio, sure. Because I think that's the thing. A lot of those shows were cable and they don't have the same rules as like radio or broadcast TV. Basically, I think technically the censorship stuff is an ill-founded and factual reality in this movie.
Well, I'm sure there were. I mean, I'm just thinking about like Springer and Ricky Lake and Jenny Jones and Maury, which, by the way, you know, nobody's a bigger fan of that shit than my brother, Nick Johnson. That's all he wants.
He'll love hearing us be ignorant about it on the podcast.
He probably would have a bone or two to pick, or Dr. Phil and all that shit.
Yeah, why wasn't Dr. Phil in there? They got fucking every motherfucker on earth.
Dr.
Why
Phil
wasn't Mix-a-Lot in there? Everyone else is a comedian or a talk show person, and then fucking Mix-a-Lot.
I think Dr. Phil. I don't think Dr. Phil came into popularity until like the early 2000s.
Yeah, he wasn't
early to mid 2000s. I do remember
why Sir Mix-a-Lot was in there. Does anyone have a theory?
Why Sir Mix-a-Lot was in there? I have no idea.
Because everyone else makes sense. You know, Roseanne, Gilbert Gottfried, sure, but Sir Mix-a-Lot, what the fuck?
Well, this is a little bit of a digression from this conversation, but I also want to mention like Michael Bolton being in the movie is one that I didn't really make.
That was way past prime for that. I don't think he'd had a hit in a while.
Yeah. I mean, at that point, he definitely passed his prime there. I do remember I do, just going back to the talk show thing, I do remember Jerry Springer being like, Jerry Springer is like, this is like the death of Western civilization, and this is like totally.
Yeah, but it was never taken off the air.
No, it was. No, but they made a movie, The Ringmaster, with that too. Yeah, so if anything, on that one,
I'm saying this movie has sent up a false oppositional hurdle for itself that wasn't based in reality. Do people that see the podcast see Evan's stock photo image when he does this? I wish we could make them see it. It's a very funny, very out-of-date photo of Evan looking photoshopped in front of some trees. Evan, if you're editing this, please make it so the audience can see your stock photo.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, it just seemed like, because isn't it also like, what is it, PCU? I'm trying to think of other movies that are about like 90s censorship stuff.
90s censorship, whatnot.
Because it wasn't.
Well, the other one that comes to mind is what Evan mentioned was Private Parts with that one, but
the radio for sure was a big deal, and that's why satellite radio for Howard became a big thing because it's not regulated the same way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So this one, and next to talk about Wally Sparks, this movie did have an R rating. Was rated R, and I want to reference. What do you say?
I would say it earned it. I'm not surprised.
I would say you probably could, just using the precedent that was set by Cronenberg's Crash getting an NC-17 rating. I feel like this movie has more of a case for an NC-17 rating than Crash did.
Yeah, like it would have a more adverse effect on children than Crash.
Yeah. Because I think with Crash is that you could show that movie to like children. They would not. I'm just thinking about myself as 11 years old watching Crash. I would have no idea what was going on. Like I would
Yeah,
not
you'd
comprehend
be
any of
kind of
that.
scared. You'd be like, what is it? But this, you'd be like, I want to like drink and molest people.
Right? Yes. On that. Anyway, just also off topic here too. Have you been dealing with some smoke out there in Vermont?
No, not really. I mean, maybe the sunset's a little different or hazy, but if I didn't have the news, I would have no idea. Everyone in New York can't stop taking photos of it, and you'd think it would be here, but Vermont's just too. The power of natural beauty of Vermont is like in Fern Gully. We keep the smog, the Tim Curry smog monster away with our fairies and elves and whatever the fuck else.
Is that Tim Curry who plays Hexus in Fern Gully?
Yeah, bud. You know that vibrato.
I didn't know that.
I'm trying to think of the song. Fuck. His song when he comes out.
I know the song. Slime beneath me. That's like the anthem for my whole life. Slime up above.
But anyway, Tim Curry's the smog, and it goes to New York because New York's trash. Vermont's beautiful. The smog leaves us alone because all things are anthropomorphically conscious and aware of still.
But yeah, this was a solid R, you were saying, huh? Solid
Yeah,
R.
solid R. Yeah,
I was saying that if the Cronenberg Crash was NC-17, this should have been NC-17 more than Crash. And we were talking about how this would probably have a more adverse effect on children watching it than Crash.
There wasn't enough nudity. I expected there to be
I
more.
wanted Rodney's dick flopping around. You want to talk about your dick? Let's fucking see it, Rodney. Whip it out, bud.
I kind of am curious. Yeah. And that brings me to another question I have, which was when the culmination of the statue's marble penis, transition into the party and then onto the hors d'oeuvre tray. Fucking, yeah. What are those hors d'oeuvres? Why are they just serving half cucumbers?
Well, I think it's unrealistic, but it's to set up the joke about her being like, I don't eat meat. So they're like, I don't know, put some fucking vegetables on there. The joke is that she doesn't eat meat and she picks up the big dick.
Right, but like that's not an hors d'oeuvre that anybody.
No, I think it's purely to set up the I don't eat meat joke.
But
no one's ever doing that. You're right.
On the rating standpoint, I bet if she actually did put that in her mouth, then that would have gotten the NC-17 rating. I bet that was probably.
I don't know. It's not a real penis. I don't know if you know. That's not a real penis. I think object. I'm trying to think because you know what I watched sometime last year. It's called like Dorm or like Bad. It's a really shitty guy has to join a sorority comedy from the 2000s, and there's a scene where he has to shower with the women, and there was some insane phallic stuff in that movie that I was like, how was this not NC-17? Where like you see a boner covered in soap, like, and it's supposed to actually be his dick and it just has soap on it. And I was like, this is a hard dick with soap on it. And this was like not an NC-17 movie.
Was that Sorority Girls? Was that the name of the movie? Yeah.
That's right. So anyway, it's sorority. They're probably like, no one on earth is going to watch this. It doesn't matter. You could rate it. Nobody cares is the real rating. And that may be what happened with Wally Sparks. They were like, whatever happens, happens. No one's watching anyway.
Yeah. Well, the movie did make 4.1 million at the box office. And it did kind of come and go.
Did you look up the budget? What was the budget if that was how much it was?
$60 million.
Wait,
I'll look that up right now. I'll go to Wikipedia here.
Another thing I was
the budget was 12 million. The budget was 12 million.
It lost most of the budget.
Yeah.
Another thing I was thinking about.
I don't know how it did internationally though.
It played huge in France and China.
Yeah.
I kind of do feel like they like Jerry Lewis. French people should like Rodney Dangerfield. They're into molesting people and being drunk. One thing, another overarching reaction I had to the movie is in general, in most kinds of movies where it happens, I'm a big fan of people crash in a fancy party, and this is definitely deeply a slobs versus snobs kind of movie. And in like Break-In, when they go to the fancy party, in Alligator 2, probably my favorite, when the alligator crashes the fancy party, in the end of Cutter's Way, which when he's riding the drunk horse through there, I was like, perhaps a reference to Yvonne Passar's Cutter's Way. But anyway, usually I love that shit, and this whole movie is that, and it wasn't giving me the visceral enjoyment I usually get from an iconic crash in a fancy party scene. Which I can't really say why, because you're like, that's the whole movie. It's a whole movie of Crash in the Fancy Party, and somehow it wasn't like triggering my excitement that I usually get. Because usually you hear Vivaldi, you have the guys with the trays, you see the guys with the trays, you hear Vivaldi, someone gets wasted and knocks something over, and that all happens. But it just like wasn't doing it for me in this one.
It's too poorly constructed. Like the key
compared
thing
to Alligator 2.
I couldn't say it. I
love the Alligator 2 party scene, possibly my favorite of all time. And that is definitely better than this movie, but like it's not a matter. And also like Break-In. Break-In's not like a formally perfect movie.
It goes too long. It's the whole fucking movie, basically.
That should be good though. If you told me there's a movie where the whole movie is Crashing the Fancy Party, I'd be like, sounds great. Sign me up. I'll be like, I'm ready to invest. Choose a check for $1 million.
There's a lot going on in this movie, a lot going on in that party scene.
With the whole movie, though, because then he moves into the house and his life becomes crashing that guy's fancy. Because there's the gala at the start, or I guess that is like the only actual party with the guys with the trays. Because the guys with the trays is a big part of it. And you are right. There's only one scene with maybe the wedding. No, they don't really crash the wedding at the end.
With this movie, I want to draw a quick comparison here, which I know doesn't really work, but I was thinking about this during the movie, is that the whole idea of kind of an uninvited person who then becomes to habitate at a particular domicile made me think of Sinbad's house guest as well, sure. Which seems like it's kind of a 90s thing there as well. It's like, we don't want this guy here at all, but then throughout the course of the movie, he saves the day.
That's absolutely true. That's definitely like the best one. That's the apex. And now that when you described it, because I'm me, when it didn't come to my mind, even though of course you're right, house guest is the obvious reference point. When you were describing someone entering the house and I thought of the Pasolini movie Teorema, where the guy has sex with the whole family. And I was like, wow, someone should do a film fest where it's Pasolini's Teorema, house guest, and Meet Wally Sparks. And then we discussed how much better it would be if in House Guest and Meet Wally Sparks, Sinbad and Rodney Dangerfield had sex with the entire family, and then they were devastated when he left, which is what happens in Teorema. And that's the subtext of House Guest and Meet Wally Sparks. Because especially, way more in Meet Wally Sparks, which is a very horny movie, versus House Guest, where Sinbad's always keeping it pretty clean. But I can't imagine both movies, like the hardcore porn parody Pasolini Teorama remakes of House Guest XXX Meet Wally Sparks XXX, where like both the dad, the mom, the kids, the dog, everybody, the horse. He even talks about it with the horse. He was on some Pasolini shit in that fucking barn. Tell you what, Rodney Dangerfield loves Salo.
Oh yes,
Rodney Dangerfield's like, Salo, my favorite film.
Is there a horse? Is there a horse scene in Salo?
No, but it was probably on the cutting room floor.
Okay. I'm not picking nits. I was just asking. The only time I've seen Salo is with you, and I believe we did some sort of food thing. We had
Salo Rotisserie Chicken Fest. You shouldn't even tell the public about that. They don't deserve to know those good things.
I'm mainly just saying it to tell Mike. Did you know about that, Mike? That we watched this movie with rotisserie chickens? I think it was shortly after I came back from Seattle, and you had already moved there.
And no. I don't remember that one. I do remember that being in the in terms of like movie watching in the same General Martyrs Antichrist era.
What do you mean?
It's nothing like that.
I've been watching it.
Right. That's
right. Yeah, like and the era there that I'm talking about is like of where I don't know, like movies with a certain grotesqueness to them were.
I mean, Salo was from the early 70s.
Yeah. Salo was?
It's a 70s movies. It's a 70s movie. One of the great 70s movie. I'm sure I mentioned it on the 70s podcast.
He means that around the time I was trying to watch the most boundary pushing movies.
Yeah. And that's the same thing with me too. And that's, where we're again, I feel like a total poser, like talking about it now, like 10, 12 years after the fact. That was also like Itchy the Killer,
We're still doing it now with me, Wally Sparks.
Yeah, that is true in our own way.
You know what? Anyone that thinks that, I promised I was going to do it. The guy I work with that's really annoying, he's doing that now. And it's the most annoying thing I've ever experienced. And the funniest shit with him recently is he was like, I'm really into movies with people like trapped underwater or in a cave. And I was like, I love this kind of prompt. And I was rattling stuff off. And I was like, what was really good? It's 47 meters down 47 meters down on caves. They're underwater and in the cave. And he was like, yeah, I started watching that one, but like I just couldn't get into it because those like annoying college girls. And I was like, so you just can't relate to them because they're so like stupid. They're not even, the girls aren't even stupid in that movie. And then it's funny because like I was making fun of him because I was like, oh, so you need kind of like a tall, smart, cool, handsome protagonist to relate to it at all. And he was laughing like, oh yeah, I kind of do. And then like he proceeded to tell me other things he's been watching, and they're all like torture porn movies that like suck, but it's just a guy keeping someone in a basement. And I was like, oh, so these are the kind of protagonists that you find it easy to identify with, is guys that keep people to torture in the dungeon. And he was like, oh, I hadn't thought about it, but yeah.
Hey, speaking of that kind of thing, I thought about this earlier in reference to the horse thing. The horse fucking comment. I've been watching a lot of HBO recently, both out of boredom and
I believe you're watching Max now.
I'm watching a lot of Max. That's right. And one of the things I watched recently was the new Jared from Subway docu-series.
Yeah.
Like 4-part series. It's not very good, but it's worth watching, if nothing else, just to hear all of the audio recordings of these phone calls that he had with this lady who who was working with the FBI to kind of bring him down. So she was pretending to be interested in his pedophilia to get him to say incriminating things, right? And so he would say these things about his fantasies to her. And it's pretty incredible. Are you guys familiar with that story?
No, I didn't even know that they had like catfished him to catch him.
Yeah. Well, that's not actually why he was caught, which is part of why they make the docuseries is kind of about this poor woman who did this with him for years, and the FBI was making her, record all these calls at great expense to her family and mental health. And at the end of the day, the reason he was caught was because this guy who he paid to run his charity center, which was a children-oriented center, was caught with child porn, and he and his wife were involved with all kinds of bestiality and
yeah, that makes more sense. Yeah, no, I had no idea that there was like an attempted FBI sting that failed.
They never tried.
Evan, I have a question. Did the documentary, when you're talking like the gets the catfishing to try to catch Jared, kind of getting a kind of a specific question here, but did the documentary touch on like how that's not like entrapment? And I'm not going to pretend to be like somebody who understands laws, but I think it's like illegal to like entrapment of like goading somebody into doing something illegal that they otherwise wouldn't do is like not allowed. But did the documentary touch on like how like when you're trying to catch like child predators, that's
predator? I don't. No, not really. The main story the documentary was trying to tell was that this lady initially met Jared and had this feeling and went to the FBI, and based on one recording she made, they told her, well, we need to pursue this and you need to keep doing this. And that went on for years, and the FBI never pursued him because there wasn't enough evidence. And I don't know and presumably, part of the reason why they have to keep it so secret is to avoid entrapment charges, I guess. I don't know. But
yeah.
Anyway,
do you recommend that?
Well, yeah, it's like I said, it's not a great docuseries, but it is interesting to kind of hear about how that story progressed, and the to hear him say the things is pretty wild. It's pretty intense.
That makes me mad because they always get you with that, where they're like, we have these like archival audio or video recordings of this insane shit. Don't worry, we're gonna milk it to 8 hours long, padded out with people that have no fucking clue bloviating about it.
That does suck. And unfortunately, I mean, like if it's a well done documentary, I mean, you can make a good that's the thing. You can make a good documentary if you have Max style production budgets and things like that about anything. You can make a documentary about the fucking toothpick and it could be good enough that I would be wrapped on the edge of my seat. This is the kind of thing where you would expect, like, okay, like hopefully they bring their A game. They didn't, and it's not very good. It's not terrible, but it's not super interesting until you get those golden rubies, right? And just like you said, Adam, they make you wait. However, it's like 45-minute episodes. So like you can,
You know what I mean? That's longer than a feature film.
I agree. I totally agree. I think at the end of the day, it's worth it. But
I work with a lady that just listens to 911 call recordings all the time. There's some podcast that there's no commentary. They just like tell you the case, they play you the phone call. And I'll see her, she'll like take a headphone out and you just hear like people screaming and being shot at. And I'm like, that's how it should be. It should be like, here's the context for this recording. Here's the recording. I don't need your expert bullshit.
Well, Jared's in jail and he's getting out,
If they interviewed him now, that I would be watching all 10 hours.
They have released statements from him in prison.
I want a face to face with that man now. I want to see what he's like these days.
And the other thing about these everybody loves a lurid tale about these uniquely monstrous, evil characters. And it's like, number one, they're not that rare. I hate to say it. Like, I think there's like, for every little tip of the iceberg like this that emerges, there's a giant fucking mountain of ice underneath the surface of society that never gets talked about. That's the first one. Number two, it's not monstrous. It's a natural evolution of an illness that society produces. And you shouldn't think that when you start to talk about it as if it's like, ordained from the pits of hell, that these evil people, then you make it something that's like just ethereal and not something that we can actually deal with. But they chose to go that route. And I'm not at all defending this guy. I think he's one of the creepiest. I mean, even if he hadn't done this shit, I hated Jared from the beginning. I thought that guy sucked. But
you did have a face where you were like,
you're not that surprised. He's fucked up. He's a broken guy. You can just tell. It doesn't surprise me at all.
I believe, because I was recently talking with someone who was at a screening of Jack and Jill. I believe he has a cameo in Jack and Jill, first episode of the podcast.
I think that's right.
Let me review my notes of that podcast and get back to you on that.
My favorite angle that I bring up at work and miraculously don't get fired that Evan's talking about is like the very popular and I think correct ideology that like by and large, in general, people don't electively choose a sexuality, that it like is in some way, if not from birth, from early childhood ingrained in them. And then it's like, if we accept that as a premise for gay people and trans people, which we do and should, then like, what do you say about like the pedophiles? It's like, you think anybody's like, you know what I want to do? No, they don't want to do that. They're like, oh, fuck, this is what I'm into. Well, I guess I got to figure something out. And like, I
don't agree with that perspective at all. That's not what I'm saying.
I didn't say that's what you think. That's what I think.
That's what you think. Well, I don't think they're so look, people have preferences, and sometimes they develop preferences which we call fetishes, and the fetishes can be taken to a level where they become destructive. And what makes pedophilia, we don't really need, this goes without saying, but like, it's not the urge to have any kind of sexual encounter with a young person that is necessarily problematic. It is what they do to acquire it. right? Like they have to
Absolutely.
undergo, they have to do all kinds of manipulative, sick shit. And to have the will to do
Yeah.
is like you got to be really, really broken, right? I mean,
Well, yeah, Evan, and like not only to have the will to do with that, but then to ultimately follow through on
yeah,
that repeatedly, and then abuse a lot of people, which then
Because I'm saying, let's say you, I, any of us are born only capable of being aroused by children, and you know it's bad and fucked up. You're like, this isn't okay, but this is how I am.
I'm
What's the
sure.
non-problematic, non-criminal
yeah.
solution to that problem?
I just want to say for that one, and this is where like I'm definitely not qualified to talk about this one, but in terms of like pedophilia, like what I don't understand is like how somebody comes into having those comes into having those like pedophilia to begin with, because like again my understanding, and I haven't read up on this much at all, but it seems like there is a relationship from people that were sexually abused who then when as they get older then just like reenact those behaviors as well. So like in terms of the whole thing, like it's just something that somebody is born with. Like I don't know, and I don't know like how that comes about, but it does seem like there is a relationship between people being abused and then reenacting that later in life when they become sexual maturity themselves. So that's the thing. Now, as for your question of like what you do in those, I mean those situations, I mean I don't really have an eloquent
You
solution
the
other than
same,
like
you do the same,
you abstain, yeah,
you treat them
like
the
that's
same
that's it.
way, you treat them the same way you would treat a person who, but and I am skeptical of the idea of like that your hypothetical is a thing that can exist, but assuming it does, you treat them the same way you would.
Which hypothetical? That pedophiles exist?
No, the case you presented was imagine somebody is born with the specific exclusive urge toward children.
I said either born or from early childhood.
Sure.
Like it's not like an adult
Yeah.
thing that they like discovered on the internet.
It's a very easy case. I mean, you treat them the same way you would anybody who is unfortunately born or developed in early childhood an urge to do something that is destructive.
Yeah.
Right.
Which
So
is,
like what if I'm born with the urge to kill things?
Yeah.
Is that supposed to just be okay because I'm born with it? Right.
Yeah.
So yeah, your argument.
well,
And
people
Evan,
that want, but
hold on a
what
second. I
I'm
need
saying
to.
is people that want to kill things, there's a myriad of proxy pseudo experiences to live
Yeah.
it out in that we
Plan for
accept.
that.
And we're like, even though it's very clear these are proxy murder experiences, we just are like, well, we know this is basically tricking your brain into the experience of murdering a thing, but that's fine. Okay, that's fine. Whatever. They're not doing it. It's a fake murder thing that you do in a game or something.
Well, Mike and I
And,
were talking about
and I
this.
don't think pedophiles have that option.
I need to jump in. I actually do have to go in 3 minutes here, so I will
Lucky
note
you.
that you are welcome to continue recording without me, but like I honestly do need to like get out of here at 3 minutes. So I just want to mention that here as well. And I mean to your question though, but yeah, go ahead.
I said it's the perfect time to end.
Yeah, but yeah, I mean, I think though, like Adam, I mean, for your question, like I'm sure that there actually is, I mean, a lot of like discussion and like literature out there, like on that very topic of like, well, okay, so somebody does have like sexual and destructive urges, like pedophiles, like okay, well, like how do you rehabilitate them? Because okay, you want so Jared is going to be released from prison, he's going to be free and like back in society. So like, well, how does he control those urges? Um, and I'm sure there is. I'm sure the answer is out there.
The real point I was making is we're agreeing with Evan that people like to like indulge in these like lurid things. And like I always like to then actively engage in a thought experiment that makes you really think. Because I feel like people have a weird distance when they watch true crime things where they're dissociating from how fucked up the stuff is. Because it's totally normalized these days. And so I like to then be like, well, let's actually think about it. Let's imagine in a first person perspective what it would be like to have these urges. And people are like, whoa, hey, what the fuck? And I'm like, isn't this your favorite shit? Isn't this all you want to listen to and talk about?
Right. Well, and the kid thing is the most obvious thing in the world. Mike and I were talking about this. When you look at most mainstream porn, all of the women are made to look as young and angelic and innocent as possible.
Not made to look prepubescent, but yes, I know what you're talking about.
You know what I'm getting at. I mean, like it's not a.
Let's in the last minute of Mike being on the podcast differentiate between pedophile and ephemophilia.
Yeah, well, Listen, I need to use this last minute here just to do the burger ranking as well, because we cannot have a proper podcast without quantifying. As is tradition, Adam, what is your
how many pedophile videos do you give Wally Sparks?
Well, I will say for this one, I'm going to give Wally Sparks probably one of my lowest ratings. I'm going to give it 1 cheeseburger, and this was I'm going to say this is a Hardee's on 3 Mile cheeseburger, and if you know, you know, but it just didn't deliver. Evan?
Yeah, I was gonna say 1.5. Hardee's cheeseburger is good though. Hardee's hamburger, even after you dropped it in the snow on the way to my house in 1997.
Do you guys remember? I feel like there was another one we did recently that I said it was the worst movie we'd ever done. But this is a contender, but I can't remember whatever recent one I said that about.
Well, let me look real quick back at what we did.
Yeah, do you guys have in your own head a worst movie we watched for the pod?
I would have to I would have to put some thought into
the first one I think it was Beggar Vance, but Beggar Vance was not
I think
good.
Beggar Vance probably was the last one that we all panned up.
That wasn't that bad.
This is
I would watch Beggar Vance again before I watch this again.
This is only our 3rd podcast this whole year, guys.
I got to sorry about being a bit abrupt here, gentlemen, but I need to depart. Thank you everybody for listening and watching, and Adam and Evan, please continue to record if that is.
Well, you got to do the song and play us out, and then me and Evan will talk about creepy sex stuff unrecorded.
We're gonna shut the recording down.
All right,
everyone.